Good evening, everyone. How are you doing today? I am Mark, and this is Asking the Right Questions, where we dissect the bad faith arguments that come out on the internet and elsewhere to hopefully build some understanding amongst each other and maybe have an actual legitimate fucking conversation for once. We can be hopeful. Alright, let me just go ahead and stop the theme song here. Okay. Alright. Tonight, we will be talking about Hillary Clinton supporters. Now, when I talk about Hillary Clinton supporters, I'm not talking about the normal Hillary Clinton supporters that you see on Twitter, the elites who usually work for her, previously worked for her, worked for President Obama, or are in the mainstream media. I'm talking about the people who endlessly cling to the ideas that she held and say that the only thing that actually stopped her from winning the election was Russia. And also the people who like to say that whenever you criticize anything about this woman, that it has to do with the fact that she is a woman and not the fact that she was a very, very flawed candidate from the beginning for various reasons. And part of the reason that this became my topic, because I'll say, again, I didn't have a topic until, say, about yesterday. And why did that come about? I'd been planning on doing this for a while. You know, I've handed it to the completely blind and ignorant dumb left Bernie Sanders supporters who just, you can't tell a goddamn thing about, say, Jimmy Dore or H.A. Goodman or really anyone who fits in their very narrow landscape of Hillary Clinton evil, ultimate evil, Donald Trump slightly better, so we're actually kind of better even though we're not at all, and shit. Can't admit that we were wrong. So, it's time to take it to the neoliberal trash that has been poisoning this country for far too long and just can't handle someone offering a different perspective. Someone who actually has, a winning fucking strategy to actually take back this country from the grasp of these elites, to make us less of an oligarchy and more of what we were actually intended to be, a fucking democracy. To remove money from politics. To remove the discussion of money being okay in politics. From removing our politicians from being just spokesmen for Wall Street and other various interests. These people are very difficult to talk to. I think they're absolutely worse to talk to than the dumb left people. Because at least at the end of the day, with the dumb left people, you can at least say, yeah, we agree on the same things, just not how to get there. With the Hillary Clinton supporters, it's a whole lot of, I don't agree with any of what you're saying, and, you know, you might as well be just pushing for Trump, because honestly, what you're pushing is a losing strategy anyways, so I'm just saying. So what brought this up? So I got on Twitter yesterday while I was at work. I have a lot of downtime at work. I've discussed this before. And I saw a retweet from Frank Conniff, someone who, you know, I have more of a love but kind of a love-hate relationship with as far as things he's done. I love what he did to Jimmy Dore on his show. I love why he got kicked off of the Jimmy Dore show. I love what he does on and has previously done on Mystery Science Theater 3000. And then he just basically seems to be constantly pushing a narrative that fits into exactly what we're talking about here. And what he retweeted was a attack, which I would, if it was just left up to, hey, these aren't worded very well, and I really wish he would have thought this through better, I might give it a pass and not be incredibly annoyed by it all. But instead, of course, it was all carefully selected tweets from Levi Sanders. Levy, I'm not 100% on what exactly that is. I didn't realize that this was a thing until I heard somebody talking about it earlier on Majority Report, on whether or not his name is pronounced Levi or Levy. I'm going with Levi because that sounds more plausible to me, honestly. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. You know, if he comes across this and he's like, hey, it's actually, Levy, and I'm super pissed at you, I'm just to be like, look, dude, I'm sorry. I'm only capable of some things. Not capable of knowing everything. So, Levi Sanders, who is running for the New Hampshire Senate, he's an outsider candidate who came in and is running as a Democrat. Of course, the attack on him because of the vicinity to his father. He was a campaign advisor for Bernie Sanders' run in 2016. And during a lot of that, he pushed a lot of the rhetoric that his father pushed, which is, we're fighting revolution for the working class. We're fighting for actual progressive policy. We're not making, broad stroke claims of, this needs to be for specific groups and whatever. It's all a part of the Bernie Sanders playbook that his father made more appealing than unfortunately he is. I think that's definitely going to hamper him in New Hampshire. The fact that he doesn't seem to portray himself as well as his father does. And these are cases in point. This is where it can be a legitimate critique of him. But where, of course, it got taken is he's a fake Democrat who's just attacking Democrats, and he might as well be a Republican, which is pretty well close to the dumbest thing I have ever read. So basically, it outs this attack as just all in bad faith. And there's no real good way to read this and to look at it. I want to look at it as a good faith argument, but it's just simply not. It goes to the same playbook. He's sexist, Bernie Bros, and he's racist somehow because reasons. And Hillary Clinton isn't racist. Ignore the super predator thing and ignore the fact that, she hasn't exactly had the best record on race since running. And, but she keeps hot sauce in her purse. Yeah, I guarantee she hasn't had that hot sauce in her purse since the primary. So, fuck you very much. But the thing is, I really wanted there to be a legitimate critique of this because I think he isn't experienced enough to be running for positions in major offices. Luckily, he's running for state senate, which is, I believe he's running for state senate. I may have to look into that. I think he's running for state senate. which is probably a good level for him, considering A, he's the son of the most popular politician in the country, and B, because yes, he is inexperienced. If he was going to get into politics, he should have gotten to it a lot sooner than he is now. I believe he is in his 50s now. Normally you want to get into politics a little bit sooner, like your 40s or your late 30s, something like that. But he got into it late. I'm sure Bernie can relate. For those who get that, good on you. You're not a dumbass. Anyways, so this is what I saw. I'm just gonna pull it up. This is from Dean Baker on Twitter. Just a number of screen grabs selectively chosen from Levi Sanders' Twitter. No context, just all critique and all not, of course, reading him in bad faith, not looking at the argument as whole. And let's go one by one. So first of all, he takes this one, which I find interesting that he chose this one as his first one to critique. Hang on a second. Let me just... Oh, shit. I apologize. I'm just editing something in my deal. So I would really like you to see me in this instance. Okay. So here we go. So we see right here, this is, it says, it's a article featuring Chelsea Clinton, talking about how she's curating the PDB, and, you know, the critique, you know, what Levi Sanders says is, just when you thought you had seen it all, there's more from another Clinton, which is a critique that I can completely understand, because the problem here, of course, is these political dynasties do not work. They have not worked for a long fucking time. All they do is become the new monarchy. They become the new oligarchs. So why are we putting so much faith in Hillary Clinton or Chelsea Clinton running for something, you know, where Hillary Clinton failed and where Bill ran and was successful in some things, but largely damaging to a lot of other things? Why is this a problem? Apparently, self-awareness, you had one job. I'm not entirely sure how that's a critique. I guess because he's Bernie Sanders' son. But that's a terrible critique, because the thing is, Hillary Clinton was the first lady who ran for Senate, who then ran for president, and is now trying to prop up their child. There have been, you know, 2 Clintons running against 2 Bushes. You know, that's a political dynasty. That's the perfect example of a political dynasty. Bernie Sanders has been a senator for I think it's been 20 years, something like that. He's been a senator for that long, been in politics for 30 years, but you know, his son hasn't run for anything yet, and has mainly been working behind the scenes. His wife has not ran for politics at all. So how is this comparable to the political dynasty of the Clintons that has, you know, been successful in New York City, in the New York area, has been successful in running the country for 8 years, but was unsuccessful and is largely still propped up within the Democratic Party? How's that at all comparable? It's not at all. So no, it's not about self-awareness. He needs self-awareness and understanding that these two things are not comparable. This is false equivalence. Again, bad faith argument. So let's go to the next one. So it's a link to a video from Dana Loesch on the NRA TV website, where says, "We're witnesses to the most ruthless attack on a president in American history. It's an insult to each of us." This is where we get into where probably not worded as well as he would have liked. It looks like at the time he was dealing with being capped at only 140 characters, but in that case I would have added a much more succinct argument as opposed to the very wordy and very open-ended way he phrases. Says, "A very sophisticated message which taps into the anger and frustration so many feel in working class America. Easily construed as, meet the new progressive candidate for New Hampshire 01, Bernie Sanders' son." And where he basically alludes to the fact that Levi Sanders supports the NRA and thinks that what Dana Loesch is saying in this video is actually good, when in actuality what he's unfortunately very poorly saying is this is a message that taps into the anger and frustration that the working class feels. He says it right there, meaning not that he agrees with it, but that they're placating to their fear and anger at being disadvantaged. The overall message of even Levi Sanders' campaign is that we need to be talking about the working class and talking about bringing them together to build themselves up. It's all over this. You're going to see this. We're even going to go to Levi Sanders' Twitter and actually look at this. Like, let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Like, let's start from the top. His most recent tweets, where he talks about healthcare as a right, not a privilege. An endorsement from his father. He's not supporting the NRA. Here he's supporting the kids who are protesting the NRA, supporting them not being challenged by or not being threatened by the superintendent to be suspended. Let's see here. Here he talks about Amazon getting a corporate handout, in the tax cuts. Let's see here. There's some specific ones that I wanted to point out talking about this. Here he's criticizing, he's retweeted criticism of Trump with his little thing here. I still can't believe he didn't remember that. Here he's talking about, finally filmed. It's a Daily Show segment where they finally filmed a Trump voter interview everyone can enjoy. And he says, except for Trump voters. This interview does a really good job of understanding some Trump supporters. And why is it good? Because this guy is rich. Like, seriously. Last week, the show returned to its roots, airing an interview between correspondent Desi Lydic and unrepentant Trump voter Jeremy Bernard, who owns a golf course in danger of being destroyed by Trump's border wall. It makes a certain amount of sense if you're looking for people who somehow still think an interview with a Daily Show correspondent will turn out well for them. Trump voters have already proven to be a pretty credulous bunch. So, there we go. Again, does it sound like he's in any way supportive of this and that his agenda is anything different? Like, we can scroll down some more because, unfortunately, the big story right now is the gun laws. And he's arguing for common sense gun laws. He's talking about gun legislation. He's literally doing that. But, of course, that tweet paints him out as he's supportive of the NRA, therefore, he bad. Because he's supportive of the NRA, which he's not. And that's the biggest joke in the world. He's really not. Bad faith readings. Sorry, I was just checking the chat real quick. Okay, so Here's where it starts. So we see right here, we need to stay focused on beating Trump, which will require embracing working class voters who are increasingly feeling that the DNC does not represent their interests. That is painted as a bad thing, according to these Hillary Clinton supporters, because Democrat good, Republican bad, and that's the only thing they understand. But they don't understand that sometimes Democrat bad, sometimes Democrat bad. And this is a very succinct point by Levi Sanders. This is where he makes actually a good point. The Democrats need to understand that they don't need to run this type of race to win over most voters. They don't. His whole argument throughout this is they need to run on working class sensibility, building up the working class, ending the wage gap, all things that we are all supportive of on both sides. You can actually reach out to Republicans by pointing out that you can make their lives better, so long as you don't talk about things like, universal health care, universal college, and all these things that actually will make their lives better. But they don't like to hear that. But you can see throughout, there's so many times where he references working class, working class, working class, working class. So the idea that he's making some sort of pro-NRA statement here is a joke. What he's talking about is how they're reaching out and winning in their messaging to angry white working class voters. And that is exactly what the NRA does very well. That's exactly what the Republicans have been doing very well for years. And the Democrats don't do that very well because they don't want to work for the working class. They don't want to talk about that. They want to pass the slightly lukewarm Republican policies, and that's okay in their eyes. So let's go on to the next one. So McAuliffe orders Confederate flag off Virginia license plates, and he says, while lawful, this hurts people's rights. And he says, right something, something, something. Here's the thing. This is something that we could have a legitimate conversation about. This is where a lot of people get mad at the ACLU. They have a tendency of standing up for the speaking rights of organizations like the KKK and otherwise, because they believe in the full unadulterated rights of the First Amendment, that people can say and do what they want, that they can actually get out there and say what they want without political recourse. While there's an extent that I believe that, I do think that things like removing Confederate flag off of license plates is a good thing, because that's basically state endorsement of that. He may disagree because he might be what some people consider a free speech absolutist. What Dave Rubin pretends to be. He's all for free speech unless you tell him something he disagrees with. Here, Levi Sanders is taking an actual approach of absolutism, saying, look, if they really want to have that on their license plate, we can't tell them not to do that. If people want to do that, they should be allowed to do that. I disagree. I think we need to not endorse such things, especially when, the history of the Confederacy is that they fought against this country to keep slaves, and that the flag was re-brought up by the KKK, and I think there is an argument to be made for not having state endorsement of such things. So, and plus, really the joke here, sons of the Confederate veterans. Yeah, maybe if you're like 102. And at that point, you're not driving, believe me. So, again, it's a bad faith argument to just twist his words around to make it seem like he's saying something he's not. He's saying that he's not for limiting free speech rights. Agree to disagree on the substance of it, but you can see his point if you're not making bad faith arguments against him. Let's scroll on. Let's get rid of the term white privilege. I read this article earlier today, and he says words shape behavior in politics. You know, I searched this out, and I read the article. And the article, again, is from the perspective of we need to be bringing people together. We need to bring working class voters together. And again, it's him not making the point very well, be it the limitation of the old 140 characters, a limit on tweets or not. He's not making the point as well as he should have. But again, context matters. All the context is bringing working class voters together and not separating them. While I may disagree on some of that, where, you know, I do see the importance of the so-called identity politics, I do see what he's saying, and not as some sort of bad faith reading of it, which is the only intention here. You're taking nothing in context. You're just looking at that and saying, that's bad. Some things can be bad on their own, and also in the context of that person. But this is not one of them. I read the article, like I said earlier, and the argument is that, you know, basically, and again, it's not something I agree with, because it's again not understanding what white privilege is, which, give or take, what sort of problematic reading that is of white privilege, you know, it is what it is. But the argument is that to poor white Americans, this is, you know, the wording is so bad in the article. The article is shit. In the article, it says that to many white Americans, white privilege is easily refutable because they don't feel privileged. They don't feel like their life is privileged. And that's something that I can understand, but again, that's not recognizing what white privilege is, because and I've done this, all I've needed to say is, well, the thing is, you're not in this position because you're white, though, and that's what you need to understand. There, white privilege explained. And you know what, it's changed some people's minds. They first resist and they go, well maybe, yeah, I guess so. But, you know, my life's still bad. And it's like, yeah, but we're not talking about that. And you know what? Once you get to that point, it's done. Like I said, reversing these bad faith arguments and dissecting them and finding the right questions to ask on them is hella important, and why I do this show. So there you go. It may not be something that I agree with, but again, in the context of what he's always pushed for and what his father has pushed for, which is bringing working class voters together, and, you know, we'll work through the racial differences from there, which is honestly more beneficial to people than anything, to raise everyone up while at the same time saying, look, it wasn't them that are to blame for all your woes. It wasn't them. You were trying to blame it on them the whole time, and it wasn't them. You know, now you're raised up due to actual good policy that actually served the public. And now there's no one else to blame. Do you still hate them? Well, let's work on that. Which is an idea that I completely get. And that's what's brought a lot of, and I'm Hillary Clinton supporters, I know you're going to hate this, but it's brought a lot of people of color over to Bernie Sanders' side. Unfortunately, it was too late in the primary to make a difference. Blah blah blah. The differences between caucuses and primaries, open primaries, closed primaries. Long discussion that we can have, Bernie Sanders supporters. We can have that conversation, but we got to have it in good faith, and it's difficult, and it's a lot more complicated than the DNC stole it for Hillary. It's not that. Neither was it, oh, well, you know, Hillary Clinton just trounced him, because that's not true either. If it was left up to all open primaries, there's a good argument for Hillary Clinton actually losing the primary, and we would have Sanders v. Trump. And as the polling had suggested, Sanders would have likely won. Jesus, I've been getting a lot of nonsense today. So, yeah. But this is not a well-made point, but it's not exactly a bad one when you put it into context. But if you're only interested, again, in bad faith reading, this is what you're going to say. Moving on. Article from Matt Taibbi. Something about this Russia story stinks. Matt Taibbi, recently on the Majority Report, said that he used to be a skeptic about the Russia investigation. This is in December of 2016. And at that time, there were a lot of people who didn't see much smoke, let alone a fire in it. I can say I was one. I was like, well, I mean, I don't know what's going on with this, but there's a lot of weirdness that's going on. And even his dad has embraced it a lot more. At the time, you know, Sanders was very quiet about this. And he was in the Senate. So he had saw some of the intelligence, and he's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if there's anything here quite yet. That's why we need an investigation, why we need to let this go, why we need to see more. But at the same time, Hillary Clinton supporters, I know you're not going to like this. Hillary Clinton did not lose because of Russia. We'll get more on that later. Did I just bait you to stick around? God, I hope so. Anyways, going on. Levi Sanders says there are few people who have weaker credibility than the president in spying on Americans. That's actually a very good point. But of course, because this is someone who is yay team Democrat and, you know, they can do no wrong because Trump, the bad faith reading is you just don't criticize President Obama. I'm sorry, but President Obama was spying on Americans. Where's the ambiguity here? Are you going to deny that that wasn't true? Are you going to actually go and say that that doesn't matter? It does matter. It matters that Bush did it, and it matters that Obama did it. And that's why it was bad, and that's why Edward Snowden should be being treated as a whistleblower and not as a criminal like he is. Unfortunately, by a lot of you. It's very stupid. We cannot let Obama go on this because he did do this. He did do this. It is a bad thing to do. It's also the reason why he said, we don't look backwards when talking about prosecuting Bush. Even though he did break the law, even though he did go against the Constitution. But he used it to do the same. That set the legal precedent, and he used it. And that's bad. Obama should be criticized on things that he actually did. This is not a Republican argument because the Republicans want to do that and are doing it now with Trump. So don't think that I'm siding with the Republicans on this because I'm also against the Republicans on this too. You're actually going with the Republicans by saying that, oh, well, it's okay if Obama does it. It's not okay if anyone does it. That's the nuanced argument to be made here. But of course, you can't have somebody criticizing someone who's on your team, can you? That's the real problem, right? No, it's not. If someone does wrong, I don't care what letter is behind their name. I don't care whether they're a donkey or elephant. If they're doing wrong, they need to be called out. Which is why I'm actually being critical of Levi Sanders in this and saying that sometimes maybe he doesn't word it how he should, and that's bad. Or in the previous case that I don't agree with what he's saying, but I also see why he's saying it. Actually, reading the actual argument in context makes it a little bit less destructive than just saying, oh, look, he's actually a racist, which he's not. That's bad faith. So in this, yes, he is right to criticize Obama. It is difficult for Obama to have any credibility talking about spying on people when he's done it himself. It's also difficult for us to be mad at a country for interfering in our election when we do it all the time. Two wrongs do not make a right. There is still something bad about what Russia did during our election, the effect of which we'll discuss more on that later. And that is a real discussion. So let's move on. Going further on to something that we made a statement on earlier. He is a free speech absolutist. So when he argues Twitter shuts down Republican candidates' inflammatory ad, he says the proper approach to this, more speech, not less. He is speaking from the perspective of a free speech absolutist, saying, look, we shouldn't be coming down on any free speech. I may not agree, but he is consistent on this. Context. Because the idea here, and like I said, I don't agree with it. The idea here is that suppressing speech only causes people to act more inflammatory. I don't believe that at all. I think we need to address this stuff head on. I used to believe this way. I used to think you take the neo-Nazis and the KKK and you shove them in a corner and you let them say whatever you want and you just go, yeah, okay, buddy. But no, what we really need to do is have responses to them and tell them, no, fuck you, that's wrong, this needs to stop. You want to know what changed my opinion of that? The shit that I've seen with Trump. So there's that. I may disagree with him, but at the same time, it's not a horrible argument that paints him as a racist because he hasn't said anything specifically racist. Okay? You got to be careful with these words that you say and these ways that you throw them out because you're only doing it from a perspective of bad faith so that when there is an actual case of that, it diminishes it. And this guy, as a white person, needs to be more mindful of that. It's a dumb argument. So let's go on. Again, he's responding to Donald Trump, talking about being an outsider. This is right after the inauguration. He says he taps into the anger and economic pain so many people see in their lives. Yeah, because, again, if your argument is that we need to build up the working class so that they don't have an other to blame for any of their plight because their plight is not as existent as it was previously, then guess what? That's your argument. That's the context. I may not agree, but it is not some big damning thing that should make people not want to vote for him. It's just poorly worded and honestly consistent. It's moving on. This one really annoys me, and this is going to get me on a number of people's bad sides. I am not a believer in Kamala Harris. I do not believe that she is 100% on our side. I believe the very second that she has the chance to take some dark money under the table and not talk about it, she will. She used to take a lot of donations from various groups. And she stopped after Bernie Sanders got popular. Which, that sort of idea is like, ugh. Yeah, spider sense is tingling on her. That's why I'm not a believer in her. But again, he's feeling the same way. Nothing that shows that she believes in working class priorities. No, there is not anything that shows that. She's supported some legislation, but you still kind of got to feel like, am I being duped? I don't know. We'll see. If she's the one running against Trump, again, I will vote for her. The same way, by the way, Hillary Clinton supporters, the same way I voted for Hillary Clinton in the general. I did not vote for her in the primary. I voted for the winner of the Michigan primary, which was Bernie Sanders. I stand by that. I also stand by my vote for Hillary Clinton. Settled? Deal with it. But here's the thing. This is supposed to put it in the same context as that, but it's not even the same thing. He's not even talking about the same thing. He's talking about someone who is speculated to be a front runner for president, likely running in a primary against his father. And he's saying, I don't believe her. Which, considering he's a campaign advisor to his father, yeah, that sounds like something a campaign advisor would say about a potential running mate. Not only that, but the fact that, yes, there are a lot of questions in Kamala Harris's past that make us wonder, hey, what's the big game plan? Because not entirely sure she's true believer in any way, and that we should be throwing all our support behind her in a primary. If she does, I will vote for her. So, moving on. This, again, goes back to another argument he has made in context. In context. He's talking about the Bundy brothers, and he says there needs to be a discussion on messaging and marketing on the left, as this group has won over many Americans. Literally, what he's saying is exactly what he's saying. But if you choose to believe that it's him endorsing them, then you're only reading it in bad faith. This is a bad faith argument. Again and again and again and again. I'm going to keep saying it until it gets clear. This is a bad faith argument. 110,000%. You're not understanding what he's saying. He's saying that they were able to go out there with a simple message that reached people. Something that Democrats aren't capable of doing. Still, to this day. Polls have come out recently as last week that they still have no idea what message Democrats are running on. Individual Democrats, maybe. People like Bernie Sanders, for instance, they know what he's running on. But if you ask them what what's that guy in Alabama who just won? Generic name, generic name, who ran against the pedophile. What was he running on? Well, he seemed to be, pretty lukewarm supportive of a lot of Trump policies. He seems very neoliberal. Seems like, again, we got duped again because we didn't want to vote a pedophile in. So, hooray, we're celebrating that guy? Cool. Again, it comes down to proper messaging. What are the Democrats about right now? Can you answer that, Dean? I don't think you can. You'd say, well, they're anti-Trump. That's not enough to run on, as you can clearly see by the fact that he's fucking president now. He won. Oh, but you did win the popular vote. That's not how you win elections in this country. You win elections by actually winning the fucking election. You win it by running for the system that's in place, which is the Electoral College. It is not based on popular vote. I know it sucks, but that's the situation we live in. Until we can actually change that, we got to accept it. So I don't want to hear any of that bullshit. It's all a distraction from the point. Trump had a message. Whether I agree with that message is a completely different thing. But we need to actually be able to look at ourselves. What is the message that the Democrats are running on this year? What was the message that they were running on during Hillary Clinton's run in the general election? I'm with her? What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean we just want a woman president? Because that's not a very good thing to run on. The reason Obama won is because not only was he, yes, a demographically significant president, which awesome, but hell, there have been black presidential candidates before in the Democratic Party and Republican Party, and none of them had won before. None of them even made it to the general election. So what made Obama different? By the way, running against Hillary Clinton and winning? What made him different was he ran on policies and he had a message. He had a message. Hope. Change. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm running on. We need to change healthcare. We need to fix the financial institutions. Now, as we saw, he didn't do much on the financial institutions, and the change that he made to fix healthcare was lukewarm and highly right-wing at best, but was still very beneficial. I myself am a beneficiary of the Affordable Care Act. But at the end of the day, he ran on a message. What is the message of Democrats right now? There isn't one. What was the message of the Bundy brothers? Freedom. That's something that people can grasp to. That's what he's saying. He's not saying he's supportive of what they're saying. The only reason you would see that is if you read it in bad faith. And that's it. Let's move on. Trump wraps up the cultural war. The elite left needs to stop criticizing and start reaching out to his supporters. Literally what he is saying, again, is we need to tell them what we're going to fucking do. Messaging. It's all so consistent. Everything he says is, I'm a free speech absolutist. I want to push our politicians to actually work for the working class, and we need better messaging in the Democratic Party. These are three things, but if you read everything out of context and out of context of the person and read it only in bad faith, you're only going to look at it as, well, here we go. He's just what? Not being supportive enough of the Democratic Party. For what reason? They don't listen to his father. They don't have any sort of fucking messaging. And, oh yeah, they've lost 1,000 elections over the past 10 years. Yeah, let's throw all our blind support to those guys. The guys that gave how many millions of dollars to those consultants and came up with damn near bupkis? Yeah, let's be supportive of that party, and rather than actually change it for the better, so that they can actually fucking win elections and actually get people on their side so that we can actually pass good policy. Let's just throw blind support at the Democrats. Or we can push them to actually get some messaging, actually push some policy, actually make the case for why we need to fight for the working class. We can do all of that. And that's what he's trying to do here. But if you're reading it in bad faith, it looks like, oh, he's just criticizing the elite left. And who's that? Pfft, you, asshole. The guy who thought that, Hillary Clinton was the best candidate to ever run. She was a terrible candidate. She was awful. Again, we'll get to that more later. Let's move on. Because this is really running up against it. Shares an article from The Guardian. May be necessary to express profound frustrations with current president before taking on Trump and administration. Again, talking about the fact that, I looked into this, and this was an article loosely talking about surveillance, I believe. Yeah. And again, he's mad because, you can't criticize Obama. How dare you? We've talked about it. You can criticize Obama for the things that he did wrong, and he did many things that were wrong. He did many things that were goodish, but he did many things that were wrong and did not help us at all in the world or anywhere. We can criticize them, and we can be better. We cannot blindly follow. Do you know who does that? Republicans do. It's not why they win, because they also have something else. They have messaging, and they actually talk about policy, which Democrats do not do. They just expect us to blindly follow and just say, we're not them. We're trying to be, but we're not them. That's not something you win elections with. Moving on. Talking about the Black Lives Matter students shut down the ACLU's Campus Free Speech event. Could not have given the Attorney General Sessions a better argument. Well, here's the thing about it. Literally what it says in here is the revolution will not uphold the Constitution. This is a quote from the protesters. That, speaking of bad messaging, that is bad messaging by those Black Lives Matter students, because that's not good tact. Messaging is hella important. You got to make sure that you're saying things that you actually mean, because literally that sounds like an argument that, we're going to abolish the Constitution, which, if you ask me, I'm actually kind of for rewriting the Constitution. But that's me. I'm far left than most people. It is what it is. But again, this is a bad faith reading of it. Literally saying that these people are saying something poorly, and yes, they can run it, much like the people at the end of the Black Lives Matter protests who were shouting about, pigs in a blanket and all that. Fry them like bacon. There were people that did that. They were a small group, and they were found, and they should not have said that, because Fox News was going to run that endlessly, and they still talk about it, and they did. Was that all of the protesters? No. Was it most of the protesters? No. Was it a small, tiny sliver that they found? Yes. But they found them, and they use it still. That's not helpful. So, yeah, that is bad messaging on their part. That doesn't mean that he's being racist. That doesn't mean that he's not supportive of Black Lives Matter. Because again, if you check the rest of what he says, it is inconsistent for him to be against Black Lives Matter. It is completely inconsistent with all of his beliefs. But if you read it only in bad faith, I'm going to keep saying that. Okay. And this is the last one. So we got this one. It's a group of tweets. He tries to put them all in context. There's nothing to say about Hillary except that she has no new ideas and is working closely with a spinster. Bad use of the word spinster. I'm pretty sure what he meant was like a spin doctor, which is, yes, Hillary worked with a lot of spin doctors. And did she have any new ideas? No, she did not. All her newer ideas that were newer to her were just revamped ideas of what she almost lost the primary to. Bernie Sanders. Levi Sanders' son. Or Levi Sanders' father. I apologize. Moving on. The problems with Hillary's emails discussed which continue to hurt her credibility. Yes, this is a critique of the news media, saying, why are they still talking about this? You know, all it's doing is hurting. And you'll see this is in May 26th of 2016. So, all that was doing was hurting Hillary Clinton. And if anything, that's proof that the media wasn't completely on Hillary's side. They talked way too much about the emails. And this is also consistent with Bernie Sanders getting on stage and saying, I'm sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails. So this is all consistent. And this one actually defends what you're supposed to be saying here. This one literally says this is the news media talking about Hillary's emails endlessly, and it hurts her credibility because they're giving credence to the email scandal. But if you read it in bad faith, everything looks like an attack on you. This is actually supportive of you, but good Lord. Moving on. The level of disgust for Hillary Clinton is palpable, which means that she can be a new and improved Democrat. I didn't look up the article, but I get what he's saying here. Again, there was a level of disgust for Hillary Clinton. This is all true. And the idea was, you know, they were trying to paint it, they were trying to spin him. Again, going back to the first one. The first image that this guy shared. They were trying to spin her as being some sort of new Democrat when actually she is as old school Democrat as it comes. She may have embraced some policy changes, like I said, toward being progressive. But ultimately, what really hampered her in the elections is a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters didn't believe that she was actually going to fight for these policies. Gee, I don't know why. Maybe because the last guy who pushed such things didn't follow through on them and was a Democrat and painted a pretty picture. You know, Hillary Clinton painted a less pretty picture, wasn't nearly as charismatic, and you believed her less because she had a track record that proved against what she was even arguing. Okay? So this is literally saying that, again, that yes, there were a lot of people who really did not like Hillary Clinton. She was a terribly flawed candidate. It's what I've been saying this whole time, what we've all realized, except if you are a Hillary Clinton supporter. Then you believe that she was the best damn candidate that's ever run for president, and I'm still with her. Why? So that's the last one. But all of these read in bad faith endlessly. And all given this air of arrogance and just nonsense and not entirely understanding. Yes, Doug Jones, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. Yeah, I could not remember his name. I'm sorry, I'm just moving my window around a little bit. Get it back to where it was. And then we'll get the chat. There we go. All right. But yeah, it's just endlessly reading these things in the bad faith. That's what I wanted to talk about. Look, Hillary Clinton supporters, I completely understand your frustration through all of this. I get it. I'm frustrated too. I'm really let down by what happened in 2016. I mean, I hate to bring it up because it's unfortunately, it's true, and it's something that we're constantly dealing with. I live in Flint, Michigan. I live in the water crisis. I have to drink from a bottle. I bought this, by the way. Yeah. I just wanted some better water because the bottled water that we get isn't very good. It's Kroger brand anyway, so whatever. Anyways. Sorry. Got a message from somebody. Anyways. You know, if anyone understands the consequences of the election, it's me. You know, I live in the second poorest city in the country. I live in a water crisis. We have the highest water bills in the country. We also have the highest insurance in the state in the country. And there's no upward mobility to be made in where we live right now. And Trump is only hampering that. So yes, I understand the consequences of it. And I don't want to keep railing on Hillary Clinton. In fact, if you've watched my previous videos, you see that I said beating up on Hillary Clinton still is comparable to punching farts. It does nobody any good. It does nobody any good. You're wilding out and throwing fists at this noxious gas that's bothering you, when all you could do is just leave the room and come back, because you got to think about it and you got to be calm. You can't keep punching at the same thing. It's not doing any good. All you're doing is spreading it around to everyone else. So yes, I don't like to beat up on Clinton still. There's kind of no point. She's off in the woods somewhere. She does not matter. But she still matters to you guys, and you defend her endlessly. Thus, we got to talk about it. Why did she lose the general election? Don't say Russia. Let's excuse Russia out of this whole thing, because at the end of the day, did they actually do the things that they're accused of doing? Yes, they did. We all know that. We all accept that. We know. The only people that don't are the dum-dums, who we don't worry about them because they're kind of in their own world of mystery and murder and whatever nonsense, conspiracies with H.A. Goodman. We don't worry about that. Why Hillary Clinton, you know, and the other thing on the Russia thing, let me just clarify this. Because I know you guys are like, well, they targeted Bernie Sanders supporters and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing that you need to realize about all the arguments that go toward, you know, they influence certain people in the election. A lot of the people that they actually had, that they sent the articles to and were pushing that propaganda on, weren't going to vote for Hillary Clinton either way. There is no argument that can be made that says that those people that they sent those articles to were swayed from voting from Hillary Clinton. They likely weren't going to vote for him anyways. Most of them, at least. What had a bigger effect was the fact that she took places like Flint, Michigan, for granted. After the primary, she never came back here. But you know who did? Donald Trump. He didn't win Flint. Hillary Clinton won Flint and Genesee County. But do you know who won the state? It was the guy who came here 5 times during the general election. Maybe not to Flint. He only did that once. But he was in Warren, he was in Grand Rapids. He had mobilized his base in those areas that were already heavily leaning Republican in the first place. He went there and he mobilized those people. And she took us for granted. She didn't come back. That's why she lost. Wisconsin was the same deal. If you sway Michigan and Wisconsin to her, we have a much more interesting election now, don't we? But she didn't do that. She left us out to dry. She did not come back. She instead tried to, and it was literally what she said in her campaign. It was literally what she tried to do. When I was talking about how, they were trying to reach out to, Trump's supporters by actually pushing working class policy. The other spin on that is that Hillary Clinton was actually trying to reach out to moderate Republicans who were on the fence about supporting Trump by pushing more right-wing policy, which is bad tact. The thing you remember about Democrats is we actually need to be in that party actual opposition to the Republicans. If we're Republican light, we are not in opposition. We are going along. They might as well vote for the real thing. Why would they vote for a half measure? I'm sorry, hang on. Okay. I apologize. I just had a message from downstairs. Anyways, going on. But that's why she lost the election. Because, A, she did that. Second point, she ran on nothing. She ran on being the anti-Trump. Which meant what? Go ahead, answer. Well, then she's not racist. Well, it's debatable. Well, then she wasn't she wasn't gonna be for Wall Street. Well, that's debatable. She wasn't gonna push tax cuts and deregulation. Well, that's debatable. And you know why it's debatable? Because Hillary Clinton is who she is. That's the problem. And that brings us to our third reason why she lost. She was incredibly flawed in the first place. All the speeches that she got paid for in the on Wall Street, and her biggest critique she could say is, well, I went there and I told them stop it. Never mind the fact that she was a senator and she could actually push for legislation that could have actually make them stop it. She went there and she wagged her finger. She wagged it really hard. Except the transcripts for the fucking speeches came out, and she did no such thing. And that's what I mean by the biggest problem she had was she was her. And that's why she shouldn't have won the primary. That's why she was a bad candidate from the beginning. She was, it's an argument that Cenk Uygur likes to harp on, where he says the only person who could have lost to Trump is someone worse than Trump at running in elections, and that was Hillary Clinton. And that's literally what happened. She had a terrible campaign strategy from the beginning going to point one. She was incredibly flawed going to point two and three. There was a lot of undeserved flaws in her. There was a lot of smears on her from the right wing going back to the 90s that unfortunately stuck. But the problem is that in general, she had a tendency of proving that the critiques of her being too inside baseball with the elites that run this country in a very undemocratic way and more in an oligarchic way. She kept proving over and over. She kept proving it. I mean, seriously, I don't think that there was a lobbying group that she didn't take money from at some point. I'm pretty sure the NRA did give her money. So yes, she was a bad candidate, and you have to accept that. Russia had very little to do with it. Does that mean that we let the Russia thing go? No. And that's a separate stream that I'm going to do. Because things are coming out like crazy about this thing, and it's getting harder and harder to ignore. And only dumbasses like Jimmy Dore and H.A. Goodman want to continue to pretend like there's nothing there as the arrests pile up, as the evidence piles up, and they just say, nope, nope, no evidence, no evidence, nope, 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 nope. This chip clip is blue. And that's what I believe. And you cannot convince me otherwise. Because I'm an expert. Oh, it's actually red. I'm sorry, I'm a comedian. Anyways. So, yeah, that's the real reasons why she lost. And the polls prove that. Still, to this day, that there is a problem in the Democratic Party. There's a problem that needs to be fixed. And if we don't fix it, we are not going to have the blue wave that we expect in 2018. We're going to lose again. And then in 2020, we're going to lose then too. God, do you think there will be anything left of this country after 8 years of Trump? We're almost at, what, a year and a half? And my fucking God, everything has been dismantled. We're no longer running like an oligarchy. We are an oligarchy. And if we push someone who's oligarch light to run for us, then guess what? We have fixed nothing and we will lose. We have to pick someone who can actually win, who actually is going to push middle class and working class voters to actually show up and be like, you know what, this guy's actually going to do something for me. And it doesn't have to be a guy, by the way. I'm one of those people that use words like guy and dude to be non-gender specific. So it could be a woman. So no, I'm not being sexist. I don't care that she was a woman. What I do care about is that it was that woman. The incredibly flawed, the incredibly corrupt Hillary Clinton. One who we can only say that we hope that she would do the things that she said she was going to do, and that she would actually be a good politician, actually listen to her constituents in order to hold power. I have full faith that that's likely what she would do, while in the process also doing some very problematic things, which she would have done. Some of the stuff that she did run on, that was problematic, and some of the stuff that she didn't run on. It still would have been better than Trump, but we need to recognize why she lost and be honest with ourselves. Otherwise, we're just continuing to punch at farts. So what is the big question we need to ask Hillary Clinton supporters? What would you do to fix the Democratic Party? No. There are problems. We can list all the statistics, losing 1,000 seats over the past 8 years, not having proper messaging. What is it that you can actually admit is a problem with the Democratic Party? Why is it that you're so against Bernie? That's something that I don't understand. It seems like it's blah, 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 socialist, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but that's, again, a bad faith reading. What is it that you're wholly against? What was it that Clinton actually did that was good for you that makes you still say that you want to be with her and that you would probably vote for her if she ran again? What is the purpose of that? What good is it? I don't know if there's an actual way to reach out to Hillary Clinton supporters without being called sexist, and I'm sure I'm going to be called that in the comments as soon as I put the tags on, because YouTube has this weird system where I have to wait till the video gets approved before I can put tags in it. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have more people in the comment section. I tried to bring some people over. I tried to bring some of the people that I was talking to on that thread over, and unfortunately didn't work. But the thing is, I really want to reach out to these people, and I really want to have a legitimate discussion with them where they don't call me sexist, because there's no proof to that. My criticism of her doesn't have anything to do with her being a woman, because I don't have any issue with that. I would love to have a female president. But as we saw, she is incredibly flawed. It wasn't her time. It wasn't any woman's time, because she was the one who was running, and she was a bad candidate from the beginning. And the sooner you accept that fact, the sooner we can move on and stop talking about the primary from now almost 2 years ago. I just want things to be better. That's all I have. All I have. You know? Do you know who was the last politician to come to my city? Let's go further back. The last 3 politicians to come to my city, and this dates back to the general election. The furthest back one of the last 3 was Donald Trump. The second was then President Obama. And the third, as recent as this week, was Bernie Sanders. Do you notice what name is missing in that now 2 years since Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton did not come here at all during the general election. And I think that proves the point entirely. Hang on a second, I just got to check the chat. I'm having trouble reading it. Thank you, love. It's my wife getting on my my YouTube account on the computer I left signed in downstairs. But thanks for popping in. But I mean, I think that is ultimately the point. Like I said, dating back to the general election, the last 3 national politicians who visited Flint, Michigan were Donald Trump, President Obama, and Bernie Sanders. And nowhere in there, like I said, Bernie Sanders as recently as this week, it was last week, excuse me. I was unfortunately not able to attend because I have a Monday through Friday day job. So it is what it is. I had some friends go who said it was a very, very good meeting, and he actually listens to people. There are many clips from him doing these sorts of things all around the country and doing it here. He actually listens to people, and that's nice. That's great. But it's so telling. So then why should I put my faith in Hillary Clinton still? She seems to have forgotten us. She seems to have forgotten anyone who can't benefit her at that time. And she leaves them out to dry. So why do we keep putting so much faith in her? And why can't we just move on past her, recognize her flaws, and say, you know what, she lost for very good reasons. I even forgot the Comey letter. That happened. That was a big reason she lost. That was a bigger reason than the Russia thing. But, you know, you have to be willing to have the conversation first in order to actually have the conversation. Otherwise, we're just going to be yelling at each other in bad faith. And I'm wholly against that. It's the point of this show. That's my time. My name is Mark. This was Asking the Right Questions. I hope you guys enjoy this. Looking forward to one day building enough support to have people participate in the chat and participate in the conversation. Ultimately, that's what I want this show to be. I want to get quicker to excuse me, quicker to the conclusion, while also having a discussion with you and actually talking about these things in the chat. So, if you like what you hear, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Because I live in Michigan, that's the time zone that I run on. I'm not going to convert it for you. You could do that yourself. I believe in you. You're smart. But thank you for coming out, and we'll be here same bat time on same bat channel.